for this controversial session is going to be Eric Swanson, who's going to be talking about conflicts of interest in plastic surgery and problem and solution. So, Eric.
Well, nice to see the healthy debate. I'm going to talk about COI and plastic surgery, the problem and the solution. These are my disclosures. Now, when Dr. Goldwyn stepped down as PRS editor in 2004, he told the incoming managing editor, "Will you see to it that the journal doesn't sell out to special interests? Will you keep it pure? It is a commitment to which you must succeed, a promise you must fulfill." He was very worked up about this, so we might ask 20 years later, were his fears justified? Now, in 2015, Ed Luce, boldly proposed that editors with COIs be excused from being editors, from editorial boards, and same for reviewers and discussants. This proposal was dismissed by 3 former presidents of ASPS who collected more than $4 million from industry between 2015 and 2021, so not too much of a surprise there. Now we have to look at the definition of terms. Consultancy fee, it's actually defined as a fee charged for expert knowledge and service to a business, typically charged hourly. We hear this term all the time. Is it being accurately used, or are these payments something else? Now, the Sunshine Act, this is a remarkable new tool, and it's allowed us to actually view physician payments, and it's made this transparent. It's only available in the US, unfortunately. It was conceived after felony prosecutions occurred. Now, the CMS regards most physician payments as equivalent to bribes. Now, let's look up me on this CMS database. You can see the green line, that's the plastic surgery mean. Yellow line is the US mean. The blue line at the bottom, that's my line. I consider this kind of an ethical EKG, but it's good to be asystolic on this EKG. So let's look up Dr. Scott Glassberg, ASPS Board of Directors, PSF President, 2015 ASPS President. Let's look up him. Now you can see the vertical scales changed completely. Payments from Allergan and LifeCell, $1.24 million, or $177,000 per year from those companies. Now, why is this important? Well, there is this on ASPS, the physician resources. Dr. Glassberg is talking with patients about BIA-LCL. He is saying the current risks associated with surgery are higher than the risk of developing BIA-ALCL. First of all, I'm not sure that's true with the latest statistics. He's actually discouraging people from having their BioCell implants removed. But what's missing from this is he's a paid Allergan spokesperson, and this should be disclosed on this video. In this extraordinary response, Dr. Santinelli was talking about this a little earlier, but the ASPS response, well, there's the FDA, and then this was followed immediately by the ASPS response to the PRS consensus statement from AAPS. The next day this came out. We got it as an email, a response. It was reviewed by ASPS staff and an independent external methodologist. We have no idea who that is. We don't know who the staff is. We don't know who the authors of this email, but ASPS is basically saying, don't listen to that. This paper suggested that it's a reasonable option, but we go more with the FDA guideline, which is not to recommend replacement of the implants in asymptomatic individuals. So where's this disconnect? We're seeing a disconnect between the science that Dr. Santinelli showed and the position of our society. Why is that happening? So how to manage a defective product? I think this is far too convenient for the manufacturer. Automobile manufacturers, they recall defective parts. The customer drives their car in, the part is replaced. They're not asked to keep their faulty accelerator pedal. It might work, it might not. But in this case, Allergan, BioCell implants may cause cancer, they're banned, but patients are instructed not to have them replaced, and there's no financial compensation from the manufacturer for costs incurred in replacing defective devices. When is this acceptable in medical care? That's just a basic question. Now, there are credibility problems for conflicted plastic surgeons. And this is what Dr. Luce said, why should I or any plastic surgeon attach any more credibility than the vendor representative? Financial COIs in medicine are not beneficial. There's strained attempts to justify them. They just don't work. So these are industry payments to plastic surgery journal editors. This is actually an invited editorial that I wrote. And we can see that plastic surgery journal editors, these are the journals that I chose to review, almost $1 million. The mean was $90,000 among editors of plastic surgery journals. So do these expire? Well, a lot of journals, use an expiry date of 3 years, but there's no evidence for a time limit. Does the amount matter? Well, even a small gift such as a single meal, that builds a sense of reciprocity. Any limit is arbitrary. There's no real evidence on this. So what is the solution? Well, it's either prohibition or transparency. Transparency is not working. And if you want to read more on this, this is my editorial. I discuss this. So doctors have a choice: either accept industry payments and disclose them, but give up their right to serve as an editor, reviewer, or society officer, or reject any form of industry compensation and preserve impartiality. So the concern is, well, you might find yourself with very few editors. But this study showed that 10% of chief editors of top impact medical journals, only 10% have COIs. So this problem might be overstated. Now, I've been saying for years that plastic surgeons need to abandon industry subsidies. After all, the average salary of a US plastic surgeon in 2021 was $500,000. It's often assumed that this money is needed for our meetings, journals, and societies. It's not true. And we just need to follow the same rules that everybody else does. Attorneys, judges, school teachers, nurses, police officers, they can't take payments. Why should plastic surgeons get an ethical free pass? Well, what would this mean practically? Well, we'd pay more in meeting attendance fees, subscription costs. Industry would save millions, cost savings for patients. Plastic surgeons relieved of ethical problems, and our integrity is restored. Now, there are a number of products and devices that are heavily affected by COI. I've actually reviewed a number of these. I'm just going to focus on breast implants and the Keller funnel. This is the Keller funnel, and the takeaway message from this publication. It's basically an advertisement for the Keller funnel. Now, here are the two studies that are referenced in this review. And, there's no reliable evidence for a no-touch technique, and the studies were undermined by confounders. And after all, the surgeon is putting them in with sterile gloves, so, what difference does it make? But these are the conflicts reported by the authors. You can see that only 2 authors on these studies reported a financial relationship. But if you look at the CMS database, $1.3 million distributed to all of the authors. In the categories of payments, 93% of them were gifts or other services. So there's rampant dishonesty. And, this is embarrassing for our specialty. 87% of authors had a discrepancy between the database and their publication. And this was, at the 2019 FDA hearing, this disconnect was very apparent. All 40 plastic surgeons defended BioCell implants, citing this paper by Adams, suggesting that the problem could be mitigated with a 14-point plan. Whereas the patients, I was at this hearing, whereas the patients presenting in front of this panel, they unanimously recommended banning textured devices. Why this disconnect between plastic surgeons and their patients? And we have Dr. Diva, he presented this slide at a meeting showing that it's really infection. It's not the device, but it's the surgeon that's the problem. He's actually still doing this. So this is a false narrative that's been promoted by industry and industry surrogates. So how does COI affect editor decisions? Well, it does affect, I personally found that it does affect editor decisions. So I wrote a 1-point plan to eliminate BIA-LCL. I wrote it right after Adams' paper was published, sent it into PRS. I rebutted the 14-point plan, showed that the authors weren't really following them anyway. It was accepted 5 months later. The acceptance was rescinded by the editor, and he emailed it would not be prudent for me to submit my letter to another journal, which is pretty chilling if you want to publish in PRS. And yet there was no reason, no ethical reason given for rejecting and if you look at the payments from Allergan, you can see that the editor was receiving payments from Allergan. So this is that study by Adams in 2017. I wrote this piece showing that it was dishonest. I won't go into all the details, but it was just a dishonest study. I sent it in. I waited until the changeover, the new editor and co-editor at PRS. Thought it might be a new day at PRS. It was immediately rejected without explanation. But it was accepted by Annals of Plastic Surgery and has been a very widely viewed article. Now, the original macrotexture breast implant article in PRS with all of its problems, it remains the same. It's in the whistleblower rebuttal. That's rejected. So COI in plastic surgery, where is the transparency? We know a little bit about plastic surgeons, but what about our societies and meetings and journals? I think corporate support is now an oxymoron. And we're getting the lines blurred between ASPS and Allergan. You can see this This came out in an email to me just last week. You see, ASPS, even the logo has been corrupted. Allergan Medical Institute, I thought it was a sales company, but it looks like it's a medical institute. So they're blending together. It's almost like we're the Allergan Society of Plastic Surgeons. In these journal covers, woke messaging and DI virtue signaling on these recent covers of PRS and ASJ, this is inappropriate, particularly so because the U.S. Supreme Court last year ruled in favor of the constitutional principles of color blindness and merit. This has no business on the cover of our scientific journals. So what are the remedies? Well, we need to break the industry stranglehold on our specialty. The only remedy really is to abandon industry financial support. Luce basically agrees with this. He says, don't take the money. And, I wrote this piece about the lessons of the textured breast implant crisis. The COI really created a moral blind spot. I think that's why we had all these plastic surgeons defending the implants. And if this experience in which our patients died does not lead us to correct our ways, I'm a little pessimistic. I don't think anything will. Thank you.
Eric, I think interesting presentation. I think that it's complicated. I think that there is a role for industry and plastic surgeons to work together. I mean, if you think about some of the innovations that have come through because of the relationship between certain plastic surgeons who are really innovators and architects of our specialty, who have worked with industry to develop products that at the time were deemed safe and effective, was a good thing. We didn't know that ALCL was going to be a problem when the 410 implant was introduced. Nobody did. Nobody anticipated this. The studies didn't show any evidence of it. So I don't always think that some of these relationships should be viewed negatively, just kind of, for all people. I think if done responsibly, it can be beneficial to everyone. And I agree with you. I think some people probably take advantage of these relationships. It's one thing if industry comes to me and says, Navid, you published 200 papers. We want to kind of work with you as a consultant. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But I think maybe the surgeon who's done nothing to demonstrate what their credibility is, who then goes to industry and says, I will do this for you if you do this for me. I think that's a problem. I don't know. Maybe you can comment.
Well, it's interesting. A study showed that plastic surgeons who receive money, they don't think it influences them. They think it influences other people. But we're not immune to it. We're all human beings. If we're paid money, there's a quid pro quo. I'm not sure I've heard anybody say something critical about Allergan who has received compensation from Allergan. So it's a problem.
I'm a plastic surgeon, but also a researcher, and I do a lot of, let's say, industry-funded research, because I need to do that because the national agencies, as a plastic surgeon, you almost have no chance to get real big funding. And then you have to think, okay, how can I make my studies? How can I bring our specialty forward in a way that there is no conflict? And in my opinion, I make the study design. I say what I want to do, and then I say, okay, good. Are you willing to fund this? And second, we have contracts. Even if I find out, okay, there is perhaps something negative, I'm allowed to publish that. So I think you can kind of make your rules, but I think it's not good to say do not accept any industrial funding. Otherwise, I think we kind of have no chance to perform great studies, also in the experimental field, in my opinion.
I disagree with that. I've done a lot of studies. I've never taken money from companies to do the studies. And I know other plastic surgeons, Dr. Hall Finley comes to mind as well. So do the studies, don't take the money. You've got a lot more credibility.
Right. So let's try to find a consensus between those two positions, because probably there is a misunderstanding. I got founded some studies from companies, not a single one, more than one company. But I reported the disclosure. Nevertheless, it's not money that I got myself. These are money that were given to the university where I work. They decided to pay, to spend, and how much to spend. I was only running the research. I don't think there is any conflict with such kind of funding. And in fact, the European community and the European Health Commission accepted me as a member of the share. Then it's not a real conflict of interest, it's a potential conflict. Different is when you get money yourself and you decide everything. So it should be clear. I don't think you have any conflict of interest, Dolores, because I know you've been founded by Motiva, but you've done an extraordinary important research that costs a lot of money. So I agree with you, but you don't have conflict of interest because I think the money were given to the University of Innsbruck, and they paid the check and they bought the reagents, they bought the animal, they bought everything, they paid for everything.
If the company pays for everything,
No,
they're
no,
gonna get.
please. Time is finished. Okay. My disclosure is to be your friend, Fabio, but time is finished. Okay. Many thanks, so. Maurice,
Please, for those who are interested during lunch, if they can come back, if you can come back, there is the Motiva Symposium here. It is very interesting with Alexander Munoz. I don't get money to promote this.